All right, we're going to kick it off in 3, 2, 1. Yo! Welcome to the Hustle Radio Show. I'm glad that you guys have tuned in with us today for our third episode. And today we're going to be talking about dreams and visions. MLK Day is quickly approaching. One of my favorite holidays for sure. Always good to think back and reflect on Martin Luther King Jr. and all the things that he did for us as a people and then for our great nation. So I'm really excited to be talking about dreams and visions because, as we all know, Dr. Martin Luther King had a dream that allowed us to have so many opportunities today that we're very thankful for here at the Hustle Radio Show. We have a very special guest with us today. His name is Mr. John Edwards, and he actually spent some time with Martin Luther King when he was a young man. And I'm sure that because of those experiences, that allowed him to propel a lot of different businesses and organizations and activities that he did throughout his life. So excited to hear from him today. But before we formally introduce him, gotta throw it to our regulars that's with me today. Tanisha Irvin in the building. T, what's up?
What's good? What's good? Happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. And then I also got my man KJ in the building, Mr. Kevin Love. KJ, what's up, man?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Yeah. And so, speaking of KJ, y'all know we can't go any further throughout this show without throwing it back to KJ for the quote of the day. KJ, what you got for us today?
All right. Well, since we're talking about dreams and Dr. Martin Luther King, man, I want to stay on track with that.
Yeah.
I think the quote I have today is a life lesson that I pulled up. The quote goes is, let your dreams be bigger than your fears.
Nice.
Your actions louder than your words, and your faith stronger than your feelings.
Love that.
And so, what I took from that is sometimes we let our fears get ahead of our dreams, so it kind of hinder us some.
Yeah.
And some people talk louder than actually doing things, actually putting things into action. And sometimes people get down on their feelings instead of having their faith strong, man. So I think that quote was real. It was something that resonated with me. So I think that's something that can resonate with everybody else, considering it is MLK weekend.
That's right.
And I think that's a good quote. What do you think, Tanisha?
I thought that was a great quote. Could you repeat the line about let what be bigger than your fears?
Yeah, I like that. I was going to ask the same thing, actually.
Sure you were.
She done started already, y'all.
Let your dreams be bigger than your fears.
Okay.
Let your dreams
be bigger than your fears.
Yeah. I love it. And that's crazy. Some people are really afraid to dream, you know?
They are.
Yeah. And like the reason why I was going to ask Suke is because like I agree with Tanisha actually on this one is that like our fears hold us back from doing a lot of things. Like sometimes we have a dream or sometimes we have a vision of something that we want to do, but we allow fear of how we may be perceived, what people are going to say of us, fear of failure. You know what I mean? Like there's so many fears that often hold us back from doing what could be great things. Yeah. I was having a conversation with my homegirl about this not so long ago. Is that and what she said was whenever we bottle our potential and we just hold it back because of fear, you never know what impact that could have on the universe, on society.
Yeah.
You may be holding something in that could, inspire somebody else to do something. You know what I mean? That may find a cure for cancer or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? But because you were afraid to just go out there and chase those dreams, it never happened.
Well, most of the successful people, if they were fearful of their dreams, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we have today.
Yep.
A lot of the technology, a lot of the advancements. And I'm sure even when Martin Luther King was marching, and he wasn't fearful of things.
Yeah.
He had a dream that he wanted to establish.
Or maybe he was, but he didn't let that stop him.
Well, he didn't. He did.
You know what I'm saying?
He continued to march and he continued to do things that made an impact on society today. So
yeah. So you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that like a common thread that a lot of successful people have is that they're trailblazers. They don't mind being outside of a box and being different. They're cool. Because when Martin Luther King was doing this, during the Civil Rights Movement, it was something that was out of the norm. Like the rest of society was functioning in a different way.
Right.
And so I think that the same mindset is that of an entrepreneur. When you figure out what your purpose is, you're not afraid to say, hey, it's nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5, but I want to do this. I want to put my passion into this, to do something totally different unique problem that I'm solving. And you gotta be willing to do that. A lot of people are comfortable with the status quo, but to really excel and really live out your purpose, that means that you're celebrating your individuality.
Yeah, I love that. And it takes a lot of sacrifices to be able to do that. I mean, some people are afraid of the sacrifices, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to give up being comfortable. I've been talking to Tanisha about that, you know what I mean? Like, I've been trying to push T to do certain things. She'll be like, I don't know, James, I'm comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, my money good right now. That may throw a wrinkle in, you know what I mean? And I'm picking on her because I know I can when it comes to that topic, but like, she's just one, and like, I always push people to be like, look, man, you're great at this. Yeah. Put 100% into it and see what happens.
One thing I noticed about Tanisha as well is she had a lot of faith.
What's this stick on Tanisha?
No, we bigging you up. We bigging you up.
Talking about your faith.
Talking about your faith.
Okay.
That's one thing I noticed about you. You do have faith. And the last line in the quote was, "Let your faith be stronger than your feelings." And so, having that faith, you're gonna overcome those feelings. Being, self-conscious about things. Being fearful about making any decisions or moves. So having that faith, man, you got that faith. Tanisha, you got it.
But success in any field is such a great challenge, to people, and you can see how some people can get nervous at certain points because you always talk about stepping up. And there's a point when you have to really step up and take on those challenges. Sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone and to get comfortable. It's just certain decisions in life and going toward those goals and the visions that you're talking about that are really going to be challenges. And you have to make, so at some point you've got to focus and just feel that I can do this and it can be done and I'm going to do whatever's necessary to do it.
But sometimes, I mean, I love the way what he said. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable in order to get comfortable.
Right. That's right.
That's a part of the process. And those wise words came from Mr. John L. Edwards, who is our guest today. He is the president and CEO of Chattanooga News Chronicle. We're going to hear a lot more from John when we first we got to go to a break. We're going to pay some bills. We're going to hear a lot more from John on his thoughts, the way he grew up, his business ventures and things of that nature. And then also going to hear a lot more from the Hustle Radio crew, of course, right after we come back from commercial break. Don't go nowhere. All right, welcome back to the Hustle Radio Show. Shout out to our sponsors, the ones who support the show. Also, if you guys are interested in becoming a sponsor, just shoot us an email at thehustleradioshow@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media outlets. It's The Hustle Radio on Instagram, The Hustle Radio on Twitter, and search us, The Hustle Radio on Facebook. Follow us on those outlets. And if you have a topic, something that you want to hear, a topic that you want to discuss, feel free to just hit us up that way, and we'll get it on there, and we'll make sure that we talk about it. So, without further ado, I want to have some conversation with our guest today, Mr. John L. Edwards. He is the president and CEO of Chattanooga News Chronicle, formerly the Chattanooga Courier. He has over 30 years experience in advertising, marketing, and public relations. And in 1982, he was named the Public Relations Director of the Year. He also, when he was 15 years old, he and his father had the privilege of marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we're especially glad to have him in the studio today to talk about some of those things as well. Thanks for coming out today, Mr. Edwards.
It's my pleasure. It's just great to see young people like yourselves having this kind of program, putting this information out, because I think so many people, especially our youth, are disconnected from their history. And I think that that's why we have so many problems, with our youth. Some of the ills that affect our communities because our young people are disconnected from who they are and the history that they have.
And sometimes they just need that guidance. You know what I mean? And if we can be that avenue to provide that guidance for them and let them know that the things that happened before their time, and even in the things that are going on now. Every Friday we do something called where we shout out our historical hustler. The ones who paved the way for us to be hustlers today, and we see you as that as well. And so we're happy to be able to have you so close that we can talk to you and touch you and have you speak to people as well. So Mr. Edwards, tell us about some of the experiences and some of the things that you remember from marching back in those days with Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, I had a very fortunate upbringing because I grew up in Nashville, in the shadow of Tennessee State University and Fisk University.
TSU.
TSU, yeah.
Yeah, my sister went to Fisk too.
So you were introduced to a lot of positive people and people who went on to be iconic figures in history.
Yeah.
So I always knew that African Americans could do anything they wanted to do because I was around achievers, people who did great things and were very successful. So I never thought that, that I was, it was going to be, I knew it was going to be some challenges, but I knew that it could be done.
It was possible, yeah.
It was possible. So that's all you have to really know, that it is possible. So if you know it's possible, then you know you're working to something that can happen. You're working toward things that can happen. But I attended First Baptist Church, which is on Capitol Hill, which is right close to downtown Nashville. It's a very historic church where the legendary pastor, Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, who's there's a Jefferson Street Bridge is named in his honor. Kelly Miller Smith.
Okay,
And he was a great, actually he and Dr. King went to Morehouse together, and they were very close friends. So Dr. King would come and preach at the church. I mean, before he was an iconic figure.
Yeah.
Because they were so close. But having, seen him like that, what happened when he went to accept the pastoralship at Dexter Avenue in Montgomery. I don't think his intentions were to be a civil rights leader.
Really?
He just happened to be the person when Rosa Parks took that step and would not give her a seat up on the bus. And when they decided to make an issue out of it, he was just the person who was the most articulate and who had come from a background with a father who was a civil rights leader. And so they said, this will be our spokesman. He just had to step into that spot in history. And he stepped up and stepped into that spot and became the voice of the Montgomery boycott. Right? So that, sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and you have to step up. If you have the talent and the skills, then you have to step in and do what's necessary.
Regardless of the fear, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it needs to be done.
He had to be nervous or just intimidated by taking on this huge something that had never been done before at this scale. So
of course
he
did.
Courage.
But right before that, he had taken an interview here at the First Baptist Church on 8th Avenue, and he did not get that job. So it's funny how history might have changed. Had he got that job, it might have been different. History might have been different altogether. So, but anyway, I remember specifically when we went to Birmingham to march, and there was some planning on the March on Washington was being done. And that was before African Americans could stay in hotels like Holiday Inn and what have you, all the hotels. So we had to stay with friends and in boarding houses, just wherever you could. The church had to set up places where people could stay when we had conferences. But we were in this restaurant, and let me tell you the man's name, and I'll never forget him, but he's my idol. And my motivation, his name's A.G. Gaston. He's one of the first black millionaires in this country. And he owned a hotel, restaurant, and other facilities, almost a whole block just close to downtown. And we would meet, he would provide facilities where we would meet and discuss our directions during the civil rights movement. And of course, I was just kind of holding on my father's coattail, following him, because I think he understood how important this time was in history. And you could just feel that something was going to change. And so you talked about fear, and you talked about faith. Y'all were talking about faith earlier. And it was a situation where you could feel that God was on your side. And even though there were a lot of, there were times when they were dangerous, and it was always, there was a dangerous in the air because people, there were houses being firebombed, there were churches being bombed. There were people who would actually drive by and just throw rocks and stuff, and even shoot, But there was a certain comfort that I felt that God had given us, those of us who were marching.
Regardless of the chaos.
Regardless of what was happening, that you could march and feel like God was on your side, that he was watching over you. So
go ahead, T.
I just want to add a comment. I think that, growing up and going through college, and I went to HBCU at TSU in Nashville, and I remember just even in high school when I learned about the civil rights movement, how powerful it was, and I was like, why isn't that going on now? Like in the 90s, when I'm in middle school and high school, I remember thinking that as a kid, like, why don't we have, what happened to that network? And I feel like we lost something from that, because even though those were trying times, people came together, neighborhoods came together, like it was a network of strong, and I think we're missing that. And I want to, we need to get that.
You know why there's a difference there? We talk about Dr. King because we had faith in people who had one voice. We could be one voice, and he could carry our voice so far because everybody had invested in him. And there were other figures that we had invested in, and they could speak out for the African American community. But we're so we're disconnected and we're not united. Everybody has a different agenda. Yeah. So nobody knows what the voice is of the African American community.
Right.
You know, because we're so...
Back then there was one common goal.
Yeah, there was a common goal. And we could get behind a person that we trusted and they could move forward. Yeah. Knowing that we were one voice and we were behind that voice and we could move forward. Yeah. And that's power. And that's power.
Well, would there be an understanding? You think all the propaganda that's out there is a reason why we have a disconnect amongst the younger generation versus the older generation? Because now you're an owner of African American publication, but it seems like now we don't own this much anymore when it comes to publication of media or anything like that. And so, do you think the propaganda that's being put out there is the reason the disconnect is there?
Well, one of those things. Now, one of the things that I do that we didn't do in the civil rights movement when we were trying to move forward, I don't think that we had an economical plan. Mm-hmm. What happened is that what we wanted was the right to go where we wanted to go to any restaurant, any theater, or what have you. But once we got that opportunity, we left our own businesses that we supported in our communities, and we went out to other places and supported the very people who were trying to keep us out.
Yeah.
And which was one of the easy thing to do, probably. One of the easiest things to do.
And then also in that time, it seemed like, or right after that time, it's when it transitioned from, it wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur in the Black community. Instead of you continuing on your family's business, it was like, no, you go off to college now, or you go do this, or you go work, and have that. So I think that's how we missed out. But we need to hear more of these stories of successful Black achievement, in our history throughout all points. Because like you said, if we don't know, the kids alone, it's adults walking around here that don't know the history and what and that knowing that kind of stuff can really just either consciously or subconsciously really boost you and motivate you to take it up a notch.
That's why building wealth is so important. We had an opportunity when we had our businesses in our own community to support those businesses and build wealth. Just think of how many millionaires, Black millionaires, and families that we would have had by now. Right. People who could have contributed back to our communities. But now we have so few, and we try to put the pressure on those few to do everything, and that's not possible.
Excellent. And y'all, we're going to take a pause real quick. I'm loving the conversation that's happening in the studio, but we got to take a quick commercial break, and I promise to all my listeners and viewers that we are coming back. We're not going to let Mr. Edwards off the hook that easy. He's going to share some more stories of how he personally overachieved some obstacles with his business ventures and things of that nature. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back on the Hustle Radio Show. Welcome back to the Hustle Radio Show. If you are just tuning in, we're very privileged to be able to have in our studio today Mr. John L. Edwards, who is the president and CEO of Chattanooga News Chronicle, formerly the Chattanooga Courier, and also had experiences as he was a young man to march with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's been telling us about some of those stories. It's been really, really fascinating. I'm so glad to have him a part of the show today. Well, Mr. Edwards, tell us a little bit about the Chattanooga Courier and your vision for it whenever you wanted to start it back when you did.
Well, this was something I got involved, indirectly in. My background was in art, and when once I figured out that some of the great artists in the world that they were actually broke,
And the entrepreneurs too, man.
And I start looking at other ways to, to be successful in other areas. I started looking at public relations, and I actually look at the advertisements on TV. Even though you didn't have any blacks really into that, putting commercials together and doing things, and I always said I can do that. I'm creative enough to do that. Or I can do it better than that. So and then you start out. Those are my visions. Those are my dreams. And stuff like that. I could use my art background to get into some field like that. Art is a very pervasive kind of field. It's involved in everything. It touches some of everything. So you can go in a lot of different directions if you're not careful. And I think that's what I was doing at first. I was going here. I can do that. I can do this. I can do that. But there's a time when you have to focus on something. And I began to help my friends. Do some of the artwork for their businesses and advertising. Just draw up their little advertisement, design business cards and stuff like that. And I joined an organization, a leadership organization, called the JCs, Junior Achievement, Program. It's a leadership program, and that was very helpful. I became the editor of the newsletter. And I remember we didn't really have any funds to promote a newsletter, to build a newsletter. And I said, I'll do this. I'll get the advertising for it
and get it going.
And I'll get it going. And I wrote most of the articles for our officers. They didn't really have to write, but many of them didn't want to, so I would write it for them. So that kind of got me interested in that. Then I started working for one of the early African American papers here, the North Star, which was run by Clarence Scaife, who just passed a few months ago. And Clarence was also was one of the first black writers of with the Chattanooga Times. And anyway, he started a black paper, and I started working with him, and I just wanted to learn everything I could about the business. And I remember it was a time when I was struggling, financially. Then I was divorced. I had been laid off from combustion engineering, where I worked for 12 years, and just having a real hard time. So in the evenings when people left the job, at the newspaper, they wanted to go home and relax. I would volunteer to go to the banquets and stuff like that. There were things that were going on in African American for a couple of different reasons. I could eat for free because I learned how to use a camera, and I was also taking pictures of things that was going on different. And I realized the power of the press. I would always if maybe the mayor would be there or some congressional figure or some famous person, and I would be up there with the camera just telling them where to stand and what to do. And I said, this is powerful. This is really powerful. This is something I would like to do. And in doing those things, people got to know me. They got to call me, know me on a first name basis, and I got familiar, because success is also about relationships. Building relationships with people. And those are things I had to understand, those little key things like that. Sitting across from people who were successful and exchanging business cards, because people like to do business with people they know. And once they got comfortable with you, then you were able to do things that you probably never would have been able to do. And they see that you want to be successful, that you're driving toward being somebody. And sometimes people like to help people like that. Exactly. And so, we started, I met a group. Another thing, you have to let people know, your friends know about your vision, because a lot of things don't come directly to you. They come to somebody else, and they say, well, I know somebody who does that. And that's what happened.
Oh, why don't you think about it this way? And they,
And then when the paper, it lasted about 4 years, and I think that they were pretty done with it. The people who had the paper at that time, it had not been successful for the most part. So when a group came here from Nashville, wanted to start a paper here, they went to those people, and they said, well, we're kind of through with that, but I know a person, John Edwards, who used to work, be our assistant advertising director. He's really interested in doing something like that. So the other people came to me, and we started a paper. And they asked to pay for, we'll pay for your office, we'll do this for you. And I said, no, I I said, what you do, you give me part of the business, I'll take care of my own office.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my own relationship with my advertisers.
I got my own clientele already. Yeah.
I got my own clientele. I said, give me part of the business.
Yeah.
They gave me 25%. Along the way, I leveraged to 50.
Yeah.
And then I leveraged to where I was in control.
But had you not had those relationships, you might not have had that same leverage that you had.
Had you not had those negotiation skills,
yeah,
like that is so. I'm in sales, so I'm in every day, all day. But I think as an entrepreneur, that's a skill that you need to have. You need to be able to negotiate and don't feel intimidated when someone says this is the deal. To be like, okay, well, I need to sign it. I'm so thankful to have it. Take a step back and know that you can negotiate. That's awesome. That you did that.
Yeah. And so, we I hate that we got to do this, but it's only a 30-minute show, so we got to get ready to wrap it up. But I just want to just kind of bring all of the thoughts back in together that we talked about. We start off the show talking about fear and not letting fear hinder your dreams, and then Mr. Edwards came in and talked about some of the things that Dr. Martin Luther King had to overcome with being the face of that movement back then, and not letting fear stop him from the things that he's want to do and providing opportunities for us today. And then he gave us some of his own stories of when he just got out there on his own by using his art, and then taking it a step further and realizing the power that he had within his skills and abilities, and building relationships and having those strong negotiation skills to be able to go out there and put his vision onto the forefront and bring it into fruition. And so that's what I want to challenge you guys to be able to do, is to have your visions, lock it down, and then get a purpose behind your vision. Because without a purpose, those visions may not last very long, or you may not ever even see them come to fruition at all. So make sure that you have purpose behind your visions, and don't let fear stop you. All right, and so y'all know the slogan: start doing, keep going. Thanks for tuning in to the Hustle Radio Show. Make sure that you follow us on all of our social media outlets at The Hustle Radio, or email us at thehustleradioshow@gmail.com. And we are out of here.
Peace.
Man, it went by quick. It went by quick. I was gonna keep going. KJ keep me on point.